My name is David 29 Sunset, and this is the Kids Popcorn Podcast, where we talk to interesting people about movies they watched as kids and kids' movies they find interesting as adults. For this episode, my guest is Gabe Fernandez, a sports reporter at sfgate.com. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to talk about movies and all the stuff that I've been obsessed with as a kid.
Oh, well, thinking back to your childhood, do you think you watched more movies than other kids of your generation?
I think to a certain degree, yes, only because of where I kind of ended up in schooling and where I ended up like in summer camps, right? I found that a lot of the camps that I went to, which I don't think distinguishes me too much from other kids, showed a lot of, movies during lunch breaks and stuff like that. But also I was in choir from like elementary through high school. And that group brought me a lot of like Disney movies that I don't think I would have otherwise seen. And it gave me like a fair amount of knowledge of like Disney movies and all other kids movies, like going into college and stuff like that.
So let's set some context for young Gabe. Where were you?
I grew up in a town called Ellicott City, Maryland. It is like 20 minutes outside of Baltimore, about like 30 to 45, actually 30 to an hour, depending on traffic, outside of DC. Typical suburban life there. And I grew up in the early aughts, basically.
So you mentioned being in choir and so on and so forth. Was this a place where that was a quote unquote cool thing, or was it more like Glee, where, like there's a hierarchy and choir is not at the top of that?
I think it's actually somewhere in the middle. I definitely didn't feel like I got any more social respect for being in choir, but also, I think nobody really cared. Obviously, I don't want to speak for anyone who maybe did experience this, but from my perspective, a lot of the people that I knew and talked to really didn't face that sort of social hierarchy stuff until maybe high school. And even then it was like, I think just a percentage of what's like portrayed on teen dramas and stuff like that.
So what was your favorite thing to sing when you were in choir?
When I was in middle school, we did a Beatles medley that I had a lot of fun doing. And it was the first time that I guess I kind of realized how much fun Beatles music was. Because, for a long time, whenever you hear your parents play something, especially in those like angsty middle school years, it's like, that is parent music, that is mom and dad music. I don't want to know or feel or care about anything they do. Oh, wait, actually, some of this stuff is, or what is it? It was Eleanor Rigby. The first time that section of the medley was just, oh, wow, that hit me. Like, it hit different, basically, which really stuck with me, and I really liked that.
Were you listening to that when you were, say, 5, 6 years old, and then you get a little bit older, and now you're singing it, and you understand it differently, or was it introduced to you at that age?
No, it was the first one, exactly how you mentioned. Actually, a funny anecdote my parents like to say is my first words in English were obla-di, obla-da, because they would play like a bunch of Beatles music at the car, and that was the first time they actually heard me like at least attempts to vocalize some words, even before Mama and Dada.
Let's step back to movies. What was the first movie that you remember seeing?
The first movie was, and you know what? I probably should have like looked into it to remember it better, because I don't remember it beyond one line of the movie. It is a movie called Cats vs. Dogs.
100 million dogs have placed their destiny squarely in your paws. Get the best agent you can in there, ASAP.
I think that if I'm gonna be a secret agent, I should have a better name. I was thinking Toto Annihilation. I'm on to you, kitty, and you're in big trouble.
I think not, baby puppy. It is you who is in trouble.
It was a not great, like classic, just there's almost like the cats are trying to take over the world and the dogs are trying to be like a rebellious uprising, like totally marketed towards kids. I remember like the climactic scene, spoiler alert, is like the dog shuts down a master plan by pressing a button and then saying dogs rule.
So I vaguely do remember this movie. I do vaguely remember this movie, because that would have been, or if it's around the time when I think it was, I was either in high school or college at the time. Mm-hmm. But I do remember it as kind of how you described it, as it's just kind of there, like it's not nobody is ever going to say this movie is a classic.
No.
But one of the things that I've talked to, I actually have an old acquaintance who ended up writing on Disney Channel TV shows.
Oh, okay.
And she talked about how, like, even if she doesn't get remembered as writing The Wire or something like that, you know, this is really important because kids remember it.
Yeah.
You know, and it matters to kids. Maybe it's not Cats and Dogs, but was there anything else in that era that you remember like vividly that maybe like that nobody else would say like, oh yeah, I'm part of the Beauty and the Beast tribe or whatever, you know, like,
Yeah.
but is there another movie that was that a lot of the movies you watched?
It was definitely I noticed in hindsight that a lot of the movie theater trips that my family would go on was definitely to let's get the kid out of the house and have him in a place where he has to sit quietly. You know, for not to toot my own horn, but I was kind of well behaved at first. You know, in those settings, I knew not to talk during movies. And it was mostly just kind of whatever was on at the time. To be honest, most of the movies, though, I don't remember. I remember the first one just because I remember the experience of going to a movie theater for the first time and being just sort of like in shock and awe of the size of the screen, you know, just the setup of the theater. And of course, like every other kid at the time, the THX like sounds buildup that happened scared me a little bit. But then that also would I also eventually got over that pretty quickly, which was very good. I think the other movie, though, that I would say that I saw a lot as a kid that maybe other people wouldn't like fly a flag for is George of the Jungle.
Tuki tuki! Ape kidnapped? Tuki tuki! Ape napped? Duh. This summer,
That's your dog?
the king of the jungle is falling in love. George of the jungle, strong as he can be.
Brendan Fraser.
Yeah,
Man.
Brendan Fraser, Thomas Hayden Church too. I distinctly remember Thomas Hayden Church's name so much more, just for like the silly kid reason of just like, oh, his name is a noun. That's a thing. We go to that. That's why it'll stick with me. And then of course there's that line which is now a gif that's sometimes used of like, now is the part where we all throw our heads back and laugh, and they look directly at three of the guys look at the camera and do that. It was great. It killed me. But when I watched it as a kid, I would always skip the opening title sequence because the cartoon version of George of the Jungle scared me genuinely until I was 10 years old. I don't think I saw it. I would ask my parents to fast forward it. I tried to like power through it a couple times in 9 and 8, and I was just like, nah, I just can't. I can't do it. And then, yeah.
So I was going to ask you, as you were explaining about George of the Jungle, were you aware of the cartoon? You were well aware of the cartoon before the movie, or did you become aware of the cartoon because of the movie?
I became aware of the cartoon later. I mean, more the cartoonish title sequence was the only thing. Yeah, literally, I think it was just the fact when the kid had his mouth open and then like he did the Tarzan or I guess George of the Jungle yell that just like I don't know, the loud noise kind of set me off.
If it was George of the Jungle, great, but is there a different movie that you remember as being your first favorite movie that you would describe as your favorite movie?
Yes, and that would be Jim Carrey's Bruce Almighty.
You must be Bruce.
Who are you?
I'm God.
Please. Okay, how many fingers am I holding up?
7.
Aha!
You've been doing a lot of complaining about me, Bruce. You think you can do it better, so here's your chance. When you leave this building, you will be endowed with all my powers.
I'm fascinated to know why that was your favorite movie as a kid.
I think it was just more the just how silly Jim Carrey was combined with something. I guess it was really the first Jim Carrey movie I got to see, and I think if you had put any Jim Carrey movie in front of me, I would have loved his silliness. I mean, he's just pretty much not just like an amazing comedic actor, but like such a good age range in the simpler stuff that he does. And to me, a lot of the simpler stuff is what I imagine got me at like 7, 8 years old. Because, you know, it's so funny to think of, you know, a guy just moving his fingers across a street and all the cars partying, like switching the shirts, spitting out the locusts or whatever to scare off these would-be muggers. It's just like those like godlike abilities. Oh, and the sequence where he's like answering all the prayers through email. Oh my God. I mean, like I was just all laughing. I mean, to me, this was the height of what comedy could be at my young age.
So was it a gateway to other Jim Carrey movies? Like did you then watch The Mask?
No, you know what? I wish it had led to that, because I realized in college how much of Jim Carrey's work I really hadn't seen, and how few people had actually seen Bruce Almighty as well. But to me, it was just more. I became quickly a kid who, when I would just put the DVD on as much as possible whenever somebody was like watching me. That was the easiest way to like deal with me, and that's, I guess, why it was easy to babysit me sometimes.
So when you think back on that particular movie, like my experience watching it as an adult for the first time, by the way,
Okay.
like just a couple of weeks ago,
Sure.
was that there's a kernel of a very fascinating movie here, but they turned it into something that was slapstick. Like I'm only about 50% joking when I say that, like, there are many different ways this could have gone. If Chris Columbus had directed this, the person who directed Mrs. Doubtfire, you'd had a very different movie. Yeah. If Paul Schrader, the guy who wrote Taxi Driver, directed this, you also get potentially a really good movie.
Yeah.
Like, what are your thoughts about the movie now as an adult looking back at it?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there in terms of like a kernel of what could have been good, and maybe sort of in a dive into maybe human psyche in response to maybe not just so much responsibility and power, but also like with what it means to truly be Christian as well, or like the relation as well with religion. But I think what I think back at it at the time is just sort of a movie exec being like, who's a very funny comedic actor, who could be a good voice of God, and who would be a beautiful female lead to put into a movie. You have 45 seconds to answer. And I think that's kind of how that all came together. I will say the one thing that has stood out to me is Steve Carell's performance as just sort of the that nerdy wannabe or brown noser, basically. He wants to just rise up all the way through, and the way he gets like brought down, and the way he like gels with Jim Carrey's actions there, especially so for those who haven't seen it, there's a scene where Steve Carell's character, his name's Evan, I believe, and I remember the sequel that we actually saw in theaters. Anyway, sorry. I'll try not to take too long on this, but like there's a scene where Evan gets the coveted anchor position at a local Buffalo news station that Bruce wants, and Jim Carrey is in a producer room, in a position in the producer room, which, having seen a newsroom, I don't think they would be letting him stand, by the way. Like, if you've ever seen a production room, there's clearly these big windows that are meant to be totally clear, and he's just standing in front of what the producers are seeing. Anyway, what he does is he messes with Steve Carell and just, like, retypes the script, making him say silly stuff. And then he also, like, does, like, funny little faces as Jim Carrey does, and then Steve Carell is just like making a bunch of funny noises throughout the whole thing.
I'm sorry, we seem to be having some technical difficulties. In other news, oh, my apologies.
The fact that this is still like so vividly playing in my brain really speaks to how many times I've hit play on that DVD so many times.
Well, also to a certain degree, like, it's successful. It did what it was trying to do. Those Steve Carell scenes are classic. So we've talked a little bit about a movie that you watched as a kid. Mm-hmm. Now, as an adult, what would you say your favorite kids movie is now?
So I have two answers to this, and both of them I've kind of been like going back and forth on because I'm not entirely sure if they would qualify as kids movies exactly. And the reason I say that is mostly just when I think of a kids movie, I think of also a bit and there's an element of safety to it, right? You know, the idea that you're not going to scare kids, you're not going to freak them out, or give them, quite frankly, just like loud noises and stuff like that. But with that in mind, I would still say the two that stuck out to me, number one is The Incredibles.
Showtime. No matter how many times you save the world, it always manages to get back in jeopardy again. I feel like the maid. I just cleaned up this mess. Can we keep it clean for 10 minutes?
I'm at the top of my game. I'm right up there with the big dogs. Girls, come on. Leave the saving of the world to the men? I don't think so.
Super ladies, they're always trying to tell you their secret identity. Think it'll strengthen the relationship or something like that.
I think in terms of not just an animated film or a superhero film, but like a film in general, it's beautiful. I mean, I think it's hard to say anything is perfect. I loved it so much that I never really cared to or bothered to learn who some of the voice actors were. Obviously, you could pick out Samuel L. Jackson, but I didn't realize until literally a week and a half ago, maybe, when I saw Almost Famous, that it was Jason Lee doing Syndrome. And it was the way that Jason Lee, I don't even know what it was in Almost Famous that he said, but I was just like, why does that sound like, oh my God, that's Syndrome?
It was probably him whining to like, I started the band.
Yeah, that's probably it. And then I could really hear it when he says, you sly dog, you caught me monologuing. And it's just, I think also what makes that really a good kids movie is that I think there's an element of being a kid where you kind of want to feel like a grown-up. There's moments where you want to feel like a grown-up, and I think The Incredibles makes you feel that way because yes, it's a cartoon, but there's like serious moments about family. There's serious moments about there's like a literal montage of all the people who have died, and like there's nothing you can. It feels like there's nothing you can do to stop this person who is bent on destroying so much of what these people hold dear, but in a way that's not like a Saturday morning cartoon. The second one I would say, a little bit more on the fence, is Into the Spider-Verse.
In your universe, there's only one Spider-Man. But there is another universe. It looks and sounds like yours, but it's not. My name's Miles Morales.
Hey, kid. You're like me.
How?
So I only actually recently saw that like a couple months ago, but if I had seen that as like a 10 through 15-year-old boy, that would have changed my life. I think just sort of the sweetness and just the anything is possible elements of it.
I want to focus on one thing that you mentioned about both of those movies,
Sure.
or specifically in The Incredibles, but that Into the Spider-Verse is really known for, which is just the sheer beauty of the animation.
Mm-hmm.
So The Incredibles, for those who haven't seen it, just think about a mid-century modern animated movie.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's what it is. And it's fascinating to me that they managed to pull that off and not make it seem like a gimmick, And then the Spider-Verse movies, like, very explicitly, they're trying to make it look like a moving comic book,
right.
But without being gimmicky about it the way that some other movies might have done, a lesser movie might have.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you see that it's a comic book world, but that you're still immersed in it. So when you think about those movies, are you thinking as much about the plot or the sweetness, as you said about it, of the plot, or are you more of a visual person who takes in the image and the beauty of what you're seeing?
I think as a kid, it was always the visuals. I think that would always kind of capture my attention the most. And I think that's mostly true of most kids. And you kind of see that with almost all the ways cartoons have captured kids' imaginations and like attention is because of the action or the visual action that's going on screen. It's much easier to keep a kid entranced and make them feel wonder and awe when there's so much wonder and awe in the color spectrum that's going on in front of their screen. I mean, the Spider-Verse movie, clearly a peak example of it. I mean, in The Incredibles, even at the time, like you said, like just thinking about how they pulled that off is fantastic. And the way that they were able to put together all of these Also just like creatively put out some of these elements of like being a superhero while not being a superhero was great. In like to me, the what sticks out is the when Mr. Incredible and Frozone, they try to stop the burning building. They try to help people from inside the burning building. They break into a jewelry store or a bank or like next door, and a cop comes in, tries to fire at them, and then after Frozone drinks some water, he freezes the cop in place. The bullet is there, and just that visual, just like I don't know. It's even now I think that looks really good in a way that you maybe wouldn't exactly see it in some modern like 3D animations either.
Yeah, there's so many. It's striking when you watch a movie like that, and then see, I'm not going to name another movie, but there are several other movies that I've watched recently where I'm just thinking to myself, oh, this is very clearly disposable. Like they're not really concerned about creating a beautiful thing to look at. They're concerned about creating a thing that that grabs somebody's attention.
Yeah.
And like that's a very different thing.
I think also in general, like the superhero element does give a little bit of wiggle room of being able to show the full creativity that you can do with animation, of just bending the rules of reality and such, in the way that, I don't know, I feel like even in some movies where magic is an explicit part of the world, they don't fully explore. And like you said, I'm not going to name names or anything, but you know, you can take your pick of the litter for stuff like that.
One of the things that another person I talked to for this podcast said that really has stuck with me is that, yes, kids should probably see a wide variety of movies, a wide variety of books, a wide variety of music, and so on and so forth. But if you had to boil it down and recommend one movie for a kid who's 8 to 10 years old to watch, what would you recommend to them? Just assume they haven't seen it yet, and that you really feel like they should watch.
Truthfully, I would go with Finding Nemo. I think to me is the number one.
71% of the Earth's surface is covered by water.
How's it going, Bob?
That's a big place to find one fish.
Has anybody seen my son?
Your son Chico?
No, it's Nemo. We're looking for Nemo.
Name's Crush. I gotta find my son Nemo.
Grab shell, dude.
Grab what?
To find Nemo.
Let's ask for directions.
No!
What is it with men and asking for directions?
If you're concerned that your kid is going to start crying at the start of a movie, fine, I get it. But also, I don't know, it introduces truly like these dark, heavy concepts in a way that I think is really digestible. And the way that it goes from the immediate loss to, maximizing the value of life or preserving, what's left and doing what you can with what's remaining, even though you feel like you've lost something. Even I think at the beginning is like a strong message, and people can, I think kids could really pick up on that. And then of course the rest of the movie is just a beautiful color fantasy under the sea, in a way that it just, again, kids can then see that also like reflected in the real world. I mean, the amount of everyone who like is anyone who's, I would say, a huge age range when that movie came out, was part of a huge age range when that movie came out, like will see the blue fish in the aquarium and immediately think Dory. They'll think Nemo when they see the clownfish, this is all. And I think the fact that you can kind of take that joy also into the real world is something that would be dope for kids to experience.
Well, a thing that you've touched on previously too in this conversation that I think you're touching on here, that I also believe, is that great kids movies don't necessarily shy away from real stakes and real heavy topics, because and not to be too Mr. Rogers about this, but like you need to talk to kids about this on their level, and you can. They can. And Finding Nemo to me is a wonderful way of doing it, because, it's not showing Nemo's mom getting killed,
right,
but it's making it clear that happened, and it is a foundational event in his life and his father's life, and like what happens from there, it hangs over everything in a way that is beautifully done just for any movie, let alone a kid's movie.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, and maybe this is getting a little too galaxy brained for it, but I think maybe it also teaches like a level of empathy as well in terms of the loss. But because you don't see the loss happening, you understand it happens. And for some kids, you know, that can be the way that they see it through their peers, through even their own parents that experience a loss, that experience a sadness. They can't see it, but they know that they can feel it. And the best way to move forward would be sort of the whatever sort of lessons they take from Finding Nemo. Of just keep swimming, I guess.
That is a wonderful way of finishing up our conversation. Gabe, thank you for coming on with me to talk about these movies and your childhood.
This was great. Thank you very much.
Is there anything you want to tell us about your work and where we can find it?
Yes, I am, as I was introduced at the beginning, I'm a sports reporter for SF Gate. We are a small but mighty two-man sports team over there. Please give us your support and reads. We'd love for you to come by and read our stuff. But in general, always support local news. Local news is the best news, and especially in these times, it's important to back your local journalists.
My name is David29Sunset, and this is the Kids Popcorn Podcast. You can find more episodes and subscribe at popcorn.29sunset.com or wherever you get your podcasts.